So what I want you to do is switch to the game view. Now at the minute, this is what the mobile camera will see. And then when we press play, obviously the AR experience will kick in, like so. So we have the standard AR. Don't worry about the terrain, we're going to remove that later on. And then here we would bring in the image target and away we go. I still love how this looks. This looks cool. This is going to be really cool by the time this is done, guys. Okay, so what we're going to do now is make a graphic user interface to overlay this screen. So imagine this is a mobile phone screen and then we put a screen protector over the top and draw or write on top of it. That's exactly what we're going to do with something called a canvas. So what I want you to do is on the left hand side, right click and create a UI, user interface canvas. Okay, now double click the canvas and switch to 2D view here. Okay, now zoom in a bit and make sure that on the game tab you have the landscape iPhone selected to make sure that we have the canvas in the right proportions. What I want you to do is make sure that the drop down here is selected to scale with the screen size. Okay, and the reference resolution I'm going to give it is the iPhone 6. I think it's 1334. Yeah, 1334 by 750. Okay, and that will handle the scaling of this canvas dynamically over the top of the screen. So it will cover the full screen. And if the screen were to shrink, then the canvas would shrink automatically with all the corresponding child items such as the target, for example, or the score on the screen would all shrink. Okay, so let's make this look more like a game. I want you to right click on the canvas, come down to UI and click on button. Now this is going to be the button that we press to fire at the bird. So what I want to draw your eye to is if I zoom in slightly, you can see that that's the center pivot of the screen. Now the rect transform is showing me where on the canvas the central point is anchored to for this button. Now what I want to do is I want to change the anchor so it's in this corner, like so. There we go. Now notice that compared to the center, the X is 0, so it's bang in the center, but the Y is slightly down as I've just dragged the button down. But if I click in the bottom corner, it's now anchored here. So relative to this point, the button is actually 667 across on the negative and 330 up on the y-axis. Now what I want to do is move this button over into the corner. So there's two ways to do that. I can either change this X transform to be, say, -100 or -200, or if I put it back, I can click the rect transform and see up at the top, it says, if I click and I also hold Shift and Alt, it will move the pivot and the position. So Shift and Alt, click, and the button jumps to 0, 0, anchored to the point in the corner. Now that's actually too close. So like I said, we'll bring it out about 200 and up maybe 100. Okay, now I want to change this source image. I don't want this button, it looks a little bit ugly. So inside the sprites folder, I have a target. So let's click the button once, make sure you're on the button and not the text inside. And I want you to click and drag this onto where it says UI sprite. And that will change the graphic. It's distorted, so just click set native size. Okay, so now it's been resized to the correct size for the image. It's a little bit big, so I'm going to scale it down slightly. There we go. It's about thumb size. And now I'm just going to move it across just by my eye to where I feel it would look nice on the game scene, like so. Maybe even out a little bit more. Okay, So inside here now, we have the text that says button. Now we don't actually need that, so I can just delete that child item. And the reason why it was so important to anchor this into the bottom corner can now be seen if I switch to the game view. If I scroll across, watch what happens to the target. It moves but maintains its position relative to the screen, including its width and height of the actual image. So depending on what screen size the user is on, then this is always going to be in the right position, anchored the exact same amount relative to the flexible screen size that we've done on the canvas. So I told it to be 137, and from an iPhone 6 of 1334, that's exactly where it is. But let's say it was on a phone that's only 500 pixels across. Well, this 137 would be altered to correspond and relate scaled down to fit the smaller device's screen size. Okay, cool. So that's the first button. Now I'm going to name this Fire Button. And now what we're going to do is add a UI text element that will be anchored into the bottom left. So hold Shift and Alt and click, and there we go. It's going in the corner. Now this is what we're going to just use for debugging. What I'm going to use this for is to find out what element on the screen we've actually hit. So this will tell us the object name. I'm just going to increase the font size and change the color. There we go. And I'll center it. There we go. Okay, so when we press the fire button, if we hit something, I'm going to get the name of the object we hit to appear in this bottom corner. And that's how I'm going to make sure that we're only allowed to hit the bird, and if we hit anything else, then do not give us a point, don't take a life off if we miss, and all the rest of the gameplay assets later on. Now the next thing I want to do is add a target onto the screen. So right click on the canvas, go to UI and add an image. And by default, it will appear bang in the center, and that's exactly where we want this one. Now, inside the assets, if I just come up and into the sprites, sprites, not scripts, I created a target icon, and that's what we're going to use for this. So if you click on that and then drag the target icon in, there we go. And that we know that that's in the absolute center. Now that's handy because now we're going to add the shotgun. So if you go into the models folder, if you come up from the top, models, gun, into shotgun, and here's the shotgun. I want you to drag the shotgun onto the camera. Okay, now if we look at the game view and rotate 90, we can see we're looking at the back of the shotgun. So if I just come down slightly, there we go. We can see the barrel of the gun come into shot. Now, if this is a little bit difficult to see, it's just because my AR camera is high up. What I'll do is I'll bring the AR camera down to about 10. There we go, look. So what I did was I moved the AR camera up on the y-axis so that when we're in the game view, you wouldn't see all of the game assets. But for this particular section, it's actually easier if we can see the background. So click on the gun, and then I'm going to move it across on the X. And the aim of the game basically is to get the gun to point at the center. I can also move it back slightly. There we go. And I always find it easier to move it down and then to compensate so that the end of the gun is still facing at the target. I then rotate up on the Z axis and bring the gun up so it kind of looks like it's pointing at the center still. And this way, it doesn't look like it's taking over too much screen real estate. I might even move it across a bit more to the left and then rotate slightly more. Well, go down slightly more. There we go. It's just off, so I'll turn up. There we go. Okay, it's all down to personal preference, guys. It's completely up to you. Okay, so let's give it a run and see how it looks. See how the gun looks with the fire button on the screen now, with the AR environment in the background. Now, one thing to consider is the AR camera slightly zooms into the scene, so the gun may need adjustment. So let's have a quick look. If I press play and hold up the image target again. Okay, here we go. Yeah, the gun definitely needs adjustment. Now, I'll show you a little trick. If you select the gun while in play mode, we can actually move around on the Z-axis here. There we go. Now, bear in mind, as soon as I come out of play mode, then this entire alteration will disappear. But I'm going to show you a little trick. That is about the right zoom that I want. If I'm playing the game and the bird's flying around, what I want to do is just click the cog and copy the component and come out of play mode. And then you just click the cog while you're in the scene, well, or the game, but it doesn't really matter, and paste the values. So it looks like it's out now, but if you remember, if we press play, it's exactly where I want it to be. Okay, and the button can be clicked as well. Okay, so far so good.